That's right. The Washington Post reports that a document recovered from former President Donald Trump's Florida estate contained information about the defense and nuclear capabilities.
Take what you can. Give nothing back. Tell me, ladies, what do you know of sea turtles?
Jay appeals Judge Cannon's ruling. Barr also weighed in on whether he thinks the Justice Department ultimately will indict former President Trump.
The problem I have with the special master is what she's done on what's called executive privilege documents. And she didn't address the only question that's in dispute, which is, can the former president have standing to say that the investigators don't even get to look at the documents, the classified documents that he wrongfully had at Mar-a-Lago? And that's the only question. And she dodges it. And then she says that she's bringing in a special master to look at whether stuff is executive privilege or not. That's not where the dispute is. I mean, if the government came today and said, we'll stipulate that everything that's deliberative there, whether it's classified or not, would ordinarily be subject to executive privilege, it begs the question. That's not what the issue is. That's why I think it was that opinion was a mistake.
So you think it'll be appealed and overruled? I
hope it's appealed.
You believe?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Make out a technical case. Will they have evidence by which that they could indict somebody on, including him? And that's the first question. And I think they're getting very close to that point, frankly. But I think at the end of the day, there's another question: is do you indict a former president? What will that do to the country? What kind of precedent will that set? Will the people really understand that this is not, failing to return a library book, that this was serious? And so you have to worry about those things. And I hope that those kinds of factors will incline the administration not to indict him, because I don't want to see him indicted as a former president. But I also think they'll be under a lot of pressure to indict him. Because, one question is, look, if anyone else would have gotten indicted, why not indict him?
Joe, first of all, fascinating that Bill Barr has become the daily sort of in-house critic of Donald Trump on this issue anyway on Fox News, given the way he performed and behaved during his time as Attorney General under Donald Trump. But he asks the question, should not this man be indicted when anyone else on the planet would be? And if he is, what are the implications of that? What are the implications for the country today, but also for the next president and the president after that?
Yeah, I mean, given his performance as Attorney General, which for the most part was...
How dare you! How dare you!
Former Trump White House advisor Steve Bannon is expected to turn himself into prosecutors in New York today. He's been indicted in connection to a fundraising effort for a border wall, and he's vowing to fight the charges, which he calls phony. Senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky joins me live now for more on this. Aaron, what's the latest? Because we know a bit about these charges, but not exactly.
Diane,
are you getting information right now?
Let me give you a bit of breaking news. Right. Steve Bannon has just arrived at the Manhattan DA's office in Lower Manhattan to turn himself in to surrender to face charges related to We Build the Wall, an online crowd-funded campaign to support what was former President Trump's signature domestic policy initiative, a wall along the U.S. southern border with Mexico. Bannon is outside now speaking to cameras. He's already called these charges phony and said they're part of a weaponized criminal justice system, but they are very real charges, and they will be unsealed shortly as Bannon prepares to now talk to investigators and then make his initial appearance in court sometime later today.
Aaron, thank you. And do stay with us, but I want to bring in our legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer, into the conversation as well. Brian, how serious are these charges?
The charges can be very serious. We don't know quite yet in terms of what they are because the indictment is...
Now I agree with Rush. I'm too stupid to make up my own mind.
Portrayed by a lot of his critics as. He's one of these guys who he came by his support for Trump honestly because of his dislike of the left and his belief in sort of presidential prerogatives and presidential power and his own theories about the Constitution. I disagree with a lot of his positions on tactical decisions on a lot of things, but his book was quite critical of Trump. The things he's said over the last year have been quite critical of Trump, and I think on this, I think what he's doing here is he's just telling the truth as he sees it, which is so strange in the current political climate that we all have to think it's too clever by half. There must be something else going on.
Bakari, what's your take?
First of all, I've never met Bill Barr, but I can tell you that I think all three of us agree that he does remain steadfast in one thing, and that's the principle of protecting presidential power and presidential authority. I mean, I think we can all agree on that that is where he's coming from, and that's where this kind of refreshing view emanates from. What most people have a problem with, and just make it as simple as possible for people, when you have Merrick Garland and many others who echo that term like you tell your children, no one is above the law. But then you see, not once but twice, Bill Barr, this same person, when he talks about the Mueller investigation and he talks about the obstruction of justice, and the evidence is pretty clear and is laid out pretty clear that there is a case to charge someone with obstruction of justice. That does not happen. And then you heard in his statement tonight even, or today even, that the question should be, should a president, former president, even if the evidence rises to beyond probable cause, should a former president be indicted? Yeah. For me, I don't know how Jonah feels. I don't know how you feel, but for me, the answer should be yes. Now, the politics aside,
Steve Bannon's criminal indictment was unsealed following his surrender to New York authorities.
That's right. The documents show the one-time advisor to former President Donald Trump is facing state money laundering and conspiracy charges. These charges mirror a previous federal case. Bannon allegedly defrauded donors through a fundraising effort to build a wall along the southern border. The former Trump advisor has denounced the state charges as, quote, phony and politically motivated. He's expected to appear before a judge later today for his arraignment.
CBS News investigative reporter Graham Cates joins us now to talk about this. Graham, good to have you with us. This criminal indictment for the case unsealed earlier today. A lot of interesting information contained inside. What's new?
You know, there's an interesting thing. It kind of parallels that federal case we saw where two people actually were convicted or pled guilty. But Bannon, of course, was not, pleaded not guilty in that case and then was eventually pardoned. And so there were 4 people charged in that one. In this case, he's the only one charged, but the indictment lays out 3 co-conspirators. So
this is how legends are born.